because I always say the quality of our life equals the quality of our most frequently felt emotion. People forget this. They want to do all the mindset stuff, right? And that's cool. But if you don't heal your emotions,
I'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Espen. How you doing, Doc?
oh, I'm amazing, buddy. Excited for this.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend. I'm excited to talk to you too. I love the work that you're doing on the other side of the world. You're coming from us from Australia right now, and what time? By the way, I always ask, what time is it? What time of day of it is over there right now?
We've got 7:30 in the morning, buddy.
Good Lord, you woke up that early for me. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
And for all the listeners and the viewers, this is going to be magical. So stay tuned.
So first of all, for everyone not watching this, you shouldn't look this good at 7:30. I'm just throwing that out there. You should not look this good at 7:30 in the morning, sir. So congrats on whatever you're doing.
Thank you kindly, sir. Must be all the meditation and all the smiles, I guess.
Clean living, sir. Clean living. Clean living. So let me ask you. So first question, how did you get started in this line of work that you're doing right now?
I think, like many people throughout their human experience, it comes down to either one, finding what you love, or two, having your life shaped by incidents that takes place. For me, I broke both my legs in 2006, and I tried the traditional medical route, going down the route and following standard advice and doing that. And there was some great healing in that. They put my two legs together through, surgery and such, but I also almost died from a hospital infection. So the reason why I'm on this path is because the creator, whatever you want to call it, universe, put me on this path because I had to heal myself in that situation. And I managed to do so after having a life-threatening hospital infection that I dealt with for almost a year and a half. Almost died. I lost 15 kilos. I had a horrible, what's called a staph infection. And so, yes, I'm on this path because I was blessed with the experience of going through trauma, so I could find healing and within healing, finding my purpose in helping others heal at the same time.
So what did you discover that is outside of the normal, everyday mainstream in regards to healing?
In essence, if you want to simplify it,
Sure.
That what I had done at the time, what I had, the mistake that I had made, quote unquote, was to outsource my healing to other people. And so, you kind of look at lifestyle, you kind of look at nutrition and other things, and you're aware of it, but you don't necessarily remember or know this knowingness that we are the healers. There's no one else that can come and heal us. There's no surgeon or doctor or nurse that can heal us, because it is the field of intelligence, the quantum field or consciousness within us, our true essence that heals. I always say the doctor can dress the wound, but it's the patient that heals. It's not the doctor that heals the wound or the cut. It's the person. So what I had to do is I had to remember that, as I say in my seminars, if it is to be, it's up to me. Yes, I can go and seek help and get assistance in the matter, but I am ultimately the one that has to take responsibility for everything, including my healing.
And with that said, when you're meaning healing, is like if you get shot tomorrow, I'm assuming you're not going to sit there and meditate. You're going to go to the hospital and you're going to get addressed of a wound. That's why I always tell people too, I'm like, look, if you get shot, you get stabbed, you get into an accident, don't rub leaves on me. Take me to a hospital, but long-term healing of trying to recover, things that are long-term, this is where you're talking about, correct?
Well, yes and no. Primarily, the first thing you're speaking of is, having the opportunity to have modern medicine in our lives is an absolute blessing in the way it's supposed to be applied. It saved my son's life. He almost passed when he was born. And also, put my two legs together. So I wouldn't have been alive if it wasn't for it. So, but there is a difference between sick care and healthcare, or reactive care and real long-term application of increasing the vitality and an experience of someone's life. So yes, I would say so, if you want to simplify it. But in essence, it's not just about healing. It's about you living a magnificent life, living, for me anyway, happy and fulfilled, and being able to heal through the experiences of life, because life is also a big healing, I think, in many ways.
Oh, and then some. And then some, without question. So you speak a lot about the quantum potential. What is the quantum potential?
It depends on from which view you would look at it, right? I mean, if you look at it from a scientific perspective, it's this field of intelligence that's been proven by science for over 100 years, since Max Planck founded the quantum theory, over 100 years ago now. This field of intelligence that is within all things, you can call it many different things. The scientists call it the unified field, if you will, or the quantum field. So it's this field of intelligence, this field of consciousness, but it also depends on how it's applied. I like to use quantum science and consciousness into the different areas of life, into my personal development and my health, as well as my relationships and other things, because we know now that this field exists. We know that that it makes up the majority of who and what we are. So for me, as studying peak performance for many years, why would I not apply quantum science and the quantum field within my practices on a daily basis if I wanted to achieve peak performance? So it is a field of intelligence, but it is also way more than something outside of us. It is who we are within us and all around us. So to apply that, I think it's just a magical approach.
So it's in many ways, is it the energy that is considered or called in the East the chi, or in Star Wars the Force, things that are in us at all and control it? I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm actually just using it because basically the Force was taken from real historical concepts, and that's why it's so powerful and it resonates so much with so many people, that those stories, because it's connecting to something that is real. They just threw a couple lightsabers in there, which was really fun, but the concept of the chi or the Force, things that are within all of us that move things, that control things, is that kind of what the quantum field is?
Yes, definitely. Most definitely. And it's been named by different cultures and civilizations throughout the eons. We know it to be true. You may call it different things. People in different cultures have different names for it. It used to be kind of taboo to speak about in certain Western cultures, certainly in Western cultures. And also, in the scientific community that, I was a part of for a very long time and still am. If you don't have the quote unquote data for it, double-blind, peer-reviewed, then it's not seen as something accurate or something tangible. But we do have that, and we've had that for over 100 years now. So for those listening that are perhaps skeptical, I would imagine that many of your listeners are not so, because they're pretty open-minded, I would imagine. But there are always the skeptics out there, like I used to be. This is science. This is not esoteric speculation. And that's why this is so exciting, because it's now something that we can measure in certain ways, in quite limited ways yet, but we can still measure it and we can understand it. And also we can apply it in our lives on a daily basis, which is where I really think this needs to be come into the forefront of science, personal development, mindset, and all the things that we do now, particularly education. I think it's really important to get quantum science and the science of consciousness into education.
Well, I mean, a lot of the concepts of things that we take for granted now, we can measure now, but at a time, we couldn't understand what radio waves were. We couldn't understand what ultraviolet light was. These kind of concepts that at most of our existence could not measure. And now we just, now radios are real. Radio waves are real. So very similar, we lack the understanding of how to measure the stuff that we're talking about, correctly?
Yes, in certain ways, and in other ways we can. I do this thing, Alex, which is really this is subjective rather than objective, but it is still real for us, because subjectively is how we experience life, right? Primarily through the five senses. I do this thing in my events where before we really start the content, I get everyone in the room to close their eyes, take a breath, and feel into their hearts. And then I give them two scenarios. I explain scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1 is for those out there that believe that there's nothing more to life than just who we are physically. That means flesh, bone, matter. The old Newton's laws, life is
materialism.
Physical.
Yeah, materialism.
Yeah, materialism, exactly. What we see on the outside, because we know, let's be honest, Alex, I have a right hand, I have a left hand. Well, the right one, it's not the same as the left one. So they can't really be the same. So I also do have to comprehend that I'm at least having a physical experience here. And then, scenario number 2 is that there's more to me. Okay, so scenario 1 is there's only physical is real, materialism is real. 2, I truly do believe that there's more to life, more inside of me, perhaps a spirit or a soul. People call it different things, right? So I do this and I get them to close their eyes, take a big breath, and feel into their hearts as to what they truly do believe. And I'd like to do this as well. Right now, if you're listening, just decide for yourself, what do you believe? One, that there's only physical things that are real, that your children, yourself are only physical, there's nothing else. Or two, that there's more to you, perhaps a spirit, soul, you're part of source, whatever you want to call it, call it whatever you want to call it, right? And it's been interesting, tens of thousands of people now, and we've calculated this and we've measured this. We've seen that over 99% of people, now, having said that, disclaimer, we do attract open-minded, science-oriented, spiritually curious people, okay? So, because they're the ones that come to our events, right? But over 99% of people, across tens of thousands of people, raise their hand when I say, scenario number 2 is what I believe. And then I get them to open up their eyes and have a look around the room, and almost the whole room is sitting like this with their hands up. And so there is this innate belief in us that there is something more to life. My quest has been showing people what that is scientifically, how to access it, and not just have, as Tony Robbins says, the science of achievement in, I want to be successful in business and finance and whatever else, but also the outer fulfillment. What does it mean to just, like you mentioned, just have this radiance about life and enjoy life while we're here, and also perhaps even give something back?
Yeah, and the other thing that's so fascinating now is that quantum physics is and quantum mechanics are starting to meet with spirituality and some of the concepts that have been around for thousands, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years, going back with some of these concepts. But when you say material, and this is, I laugh inside when you were saying, like, oh, how many of you believe everything is solid and it's material and that's the only thing that's real? I laugh because quantum physics has proven now that the material is just energy. And if you keep going deeper and deeper inside with a microscope, you finally get to a point where there is space between the particles. So they're like, yes. Well, what's that space? And then because before it was solid, everything's the table solid, I'm solid, everything. So if we've gone down that far to figure out that there is space between the particles, then what is holding the particles together? What makes this table different than me or you or this computer or the house or any of that? So then you start getting into some deep conversations that many on the materialistic side don't want to start talking about. They're just like, no. That's going to throw a monkey wrench into our whole system. Very similar.
You have to rewrite everything.
Right. It's kind of like when Galileo showed up. And they're like, no. What, that's the sun is the center. We can't have that. That's going to throw. Oh, we have to rewrite all the books. We can't,
because they had it the other way around, right?
Right, exactly. So that's where we are now. But there's so much mounting evidence, and there's shows like this and conversations like this that are hitting the masses. That at a certain point, there's going to be a tipping point. They're just like, we can't ignore this anymore, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And the exciting thing about it is that the science has been here for a long time, like I said, for over 100 years now.
Right.
And so what you're explaining here, Alex, is really, and I get this question from people, right? This, quantum science, quantum mechanics, metaphysics, or esoteric science, how do you explain consciousness? And I mean, how would you explain consciousness? I mean, firstly, I have to be, I'm not a physicist, I've got several degrees in science and I've studied for a long time. So firstly, maybe I'll explain this in a way that is oversimplified. But then again, as Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it fully. And to make it applicable for everyone, I think it's try and keep it as simple as possible. If you were to explain it and you look at quantum mechanics and you go to the core of reality, what nature says about the real essence of who we are, and again, it's the old number, 99.989 effectively percent of who and what we're made up of is space. So what is within this space? Well, there is intelligence that we know. There is an interconnected field beyond space and time. We know this through wormholes, through quantum entanglement theory, and many other practices or studies as such. So I think more so to make it applicable for us, you are right on the money. I say to my students, imagine that you put your hand under a microscope. You look in the microscope, you see a molecule, atom. In the middle of the atom, there's a nucleus, right? I think many people will be following still. And then subnuclear, lower than the nucleus. As you go deeper, you will see that we're made up of 99.9% pure space. Einstein used to ask, he used to call this spooky action at a distance when he used to study relativity and understanding the aspects of quantum mechanics that he got into. But what is so exciting is that when you do look deep enough and you find out that you're made up of this space, there is intelligence. And this we know within this space. So if we're made up of more than 99% what I like to call pure untapped intelligence, untapped energy, you may call it chi. I love the word chi or the force because it is a force, because it makes up the absolute, if you want to look at wholeness, is the majority of who we are. So then the question again that I pose is, why aren't we going there in science? And I'm in mainstream, and also particularly in education, because this would be incredibly important for our children to know. I mean, the Buddhists, I see you have Yogananda behind you and some, meditating. I've had the privilege of sitting in sacred ceremonies and in many different cultures for many different years, meditated for a very long time. And that is how we access that field, because it's there, Alex. And when we can go there, I always say, it's a bit cheeky, but it's true. You don't have to go without when you do go within. And that is truly where I think the journey needs to go now, from the head to the heart, if anything else. We need to remember who and what we are, and how to live in alignment with universal law.
Now, how do you tap into the quantum field? Like if you're someone, a normal Joe or gal, and wants to start to tap into the quantum field, to tap into that intelligence for their own healing, in emotional healing, physical healing, mental healing, any of that?
Well, the first question is, how do you tap into it? The second question is, how do you optimize your life using it or living in alignment with it? Firstly, we're never not tapped into it. Okay, there is no distance here. We are it. It is us, and like I said, it's within us and all around us. So, I mean, how to use it for our benefit, live in alignment with it, use it for healing purposes, et cetera, et cetera. The first process is to identify what you believe. Like I said before, scenario one, you believe that you're only physical. Scenario one, you believe that there's more to you than flesh and bone, that there's a spirit, a soul, a field of intelligence, if you will. If you do say to yourself, I believe that I'm scenario two, then the next thing that I would do is write down what I call this field. Some religions may call it, Buddha, others may call it Jesus, others may call it, the unified field, if you want to keep it scientific. I'm not religious or dogmatic. I'm spiritual, and my religion is love, if any. However, having said that, as a researcher, if you do look at it scientifically, you know that it's there. You've identified that within your own belief. And now already all of your cells are listening. Your unconscious or subconscious mind is listening. And of course, the quantum field that makes up the majority of who and what we are is also listening to the fact that we have a core belief that we are already connected and part of the one law of all 12 universal laws, which is the law of oneness. Once you've established the belief, once you have become even further conscious to the fact that there is no disconnection between us and the field, we are the field or part of the field as well, then the question is, as Tesla said, you asked before what's in this space. Einstein used to ask himself, is it nothingness or everythingness? And what we believe will achieve. So it's both. It's empty space, but it's also filled with pure intelligence. So then the next step is to follow, as I said, Tesla, and to understand that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. If we look at the Hawkins scale of consciousness, Dr. Hawkins, PhD, MD, was able to quantify this now using many different techniques, including kinesiology over many, many years of study. They found that there was a scale of emotions, right? I'm sure some of your listeners would have heard of this Hawkins scale of consciousness, certainly worth looking up. And low vibration is fear, suffering, pain, ill health, etc. And a high vibration are normally the things that we desire. So health and happiness, peace, love, fulfillment, etc. Within this range, Alex, from normally 0 to 700 is what they have on this scale, we call the human experience. Those vibrating or experiencing a lower frequency will have more suffering in their lives, and those experiencing higher vibrations, energy, frequency, etc., will experience a better quality of life. So then, of course, it depends on, where do you live? I mean, if you're living in a developing country, this is not as easy. for other people, because you and I have food and shelter, etc. But for most people in countries that have food, shelter, clean food, clean water, that sort of stuff, I would say that the fastest way to enter the field is, one, to just be conscious of what it is that you believe, to practice that we are a part of a field that connects everything and everyone, and then to still the mind, to still and to focus the mind also. But we haven't been taught to focus the mind in school, so we kind of have to experience and explore it ourselves also.
I mean, the stuff that they don't teach you in school could fit libraries.
That's why I left. I'm a qualified teacher. I left the educational institution simply because, I'm not interested in the things that, quote unquote, are being indoctrinated into our children. Because since we know that consciousness is real, I mean, we should at least mention it. Since we know that good health is fundamental, we should at least be talking to not even just the children, but the parents about the vital nature of living a clean lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, how about balancing your business accounts? What a credit card is, things that, how to do basic accounting, like for your own personal, these just even, that's not even in the spiritual space, but those basic life skills that you have to figure out either the easy or the hard way along the way.
And emotions.
Oh,
think
God,
about
emotions. Oh, my
crazy,
God.
right? Like this is part of my path as well. Like I suppressed so many emotions growing up because my brother died when I was 5, right? And my mom didn't know how to deal with that. And then 2 years later, my sister's born disabled, permanently disabled, never had a chance to walk and run like many of us have. And then, she didn't know how to deal with it. So she went to alcohol and was drunk every day for the majority of my upbringing. And so I suppressed all these emotions. I felt like I had to survive. And then as I got older, I recognized that I was not happy, Alex. I was not happy at all. I was sad on the inside. And it was often displayed as frustration or anger, because it's kind of this outer layer of, hey, I'm happy and look how successful I am. I was owning 10 multidisciplinary clinic, hiring medical doctors and all kind of physicians, traveling the world, and science. Deep down, man, not happy. And so I recognized that I'd suppressed a lot of emotions, and I needed to take the journey within to actually go back in time to what in psychology we call the human imprint period, ages 1 to 7, primarily, not just, of course, also, other parts of childhood, and actually sit with my shit, and heal it and heal the emotions. Because I always say the quality of our life equals the quality of our most frequently felt emotion. People forget this. They want to do all the mindset stuff, right? And that's cool. But if you don't heal your emotions, you're not going to eat well, all right? You're not going to love well. You're not going to be well. You're not going to feel well. So again, the reason I think why Dr. Hawkins, as per the Hawkins scale of consciousness, measured emotions is because it equals our quality of life. And it also equals, if you want to talk quantum science, the level that we attract at. So one of the last things that the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer said before he passed, he said, we don't attract what we want, we attract what we are vibrationally / emotionally. So if you want to have a magnificent life and attract cool things, success, happiness, fulfillment, you've got to heal your wounds, AKA you don't have to, you get to. And from there, you'll vibrate at a different level, and that'll be a different human experience.
So for many people listening, the concept of vibration and frequency is a new concept. And I'm going to just play devil's advocate here. Why is it that lower frequencies are different than higher frequencies in regards to health and happiness? Isn't it a radio signal that you're on FM and now you're on AM, or so on and so forth? What is the big difference between the high and the low in the sense of being happy, healing, being healthy, attracting things that you want in your life? I'm being playing devil's. I know the answer about playing devil's advocate.
Excellent question. I mean, we have to ask these questions, right? And I know that we know the answers, but we only know what we know. I don't think you're smart until you know how much you don't know. So I love keeping an open mind, because there's very little that I know, and maybe some things that I kind of do know. So firstly, admitting that I don't know everything, that's for sure. Secondly, I think the easiest way to explain it is that the further away from source you are, the lower the vibrational density is the way you kind of look at it. And so if you look at levels, layers, or dimensions, if you will, also known as densities, the lower the energy, frequency, and vibration, the more dense the object becomes. This is why it's harder to heal physically, because the physical or the materialistic body carries naturally quite a low frequency, and then the essence of who we are has a higher frequency. So it's literally just oscillations or movements of waves per second. That's how they measure it, right? So if it's slow, a slow vibration, there's less oscillations or movements per second. If it's a higher vibration, there's more. Within a higher vibration, if you wish to keep it, I'll still call this scientific, but you may see it as esoteric. Light travels much easier through higher vibrations when there is less density than lower vibrations where there's more density. So that's the easiest way to explain it scientifically, kind of, if you want to keep it really basic.
That makes all the sense in the world to me. So I appreciate that answer. Now, I have to ask you this question because I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, since we are talking so much about quantum physics, quantum mechanics. What is your concept of simulation theory and the illusion, the dream, the Maya that has been talked about for thousands of years? I'd love to hear your thoughts of it and what this all is. He has a big smile on his face.
Such a big smile, because it is, well, The Matrix did a great job.
Oh, wonderful.
Great job. If you look at it with an open mind and read in between the lines, a very, very, very good job. So let's look at it from two different angles, okay? One, applicable to everyday life. Okay, applicable to every single person. What does this mean to me in my life? Today, we teach that there's 8 areas of life to optimize, energy, frequency, and vibration in all of these 8 areas of life. So in our lives, okay? The second one is from the scientific view. Okay, firstly, we know through science, hardcore, back now, tried and tested for over 100 years, like I said, since Max Planck founded and won a Nobel Prize for the quantum theory, 1895. Until today, 2023, still true to this day. There is a field of intelligence inside of us. It is non-physical, and it makes up the majority of who we are, say plus 99%. Okay, so we can establish that scientific fact. Once we know that now, we also understand that we are living our lives through the 5 senses. Okay, so if you know that the majority of who and what you are is non-physical, but you are living the majority of your human experience through your 5 senses, cool, which are known to be part of the physical experience, then this is a matrix. So in essence, we are in this world, but not just of this world. And because the majority of what we experience is through the senses, we have to raise our vibration and awareness, particularly our awareness, that we are more than that which is separated. So if it sounds a bit weird, but I mean, the Buddhist monks have been knowing this for thousands of years. The Indian lineage, the Bhagavad Gita, many practices across the eons, they've known this. They've called it different things. Mm-hmm. It's just we've kind of forgotten for a while, and now we're coming back. So I believe it's absolutely true if you look at it from that perspective.
And in many ways, if Neo, the main character of the Matrix, essentially becomes an ascended master at the end, because he knows the truth, and ascended masters, to become ascended masters like a Yogananda or a Buddha or a Jesus, they are revealed the truth of what this experience is. Exactly. And once you understand the truth, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It is what it is. And then now you're beyond this place. And that's where we all strive to be, is to remember where we truly came from. So as the analogy of the Matrix, Neo becomes an ascended master. Of course, there's kung fu and there's other things that they do in the movie, because it is still a movie, but the general idea is pretty profound. I mean, he is a Jesus character. I mean, his name is Neo, which is, you switch the words around, it's one, you are the one. I mean, the Jesus metaphors are pretty heavy in that film. But it's pretty profound. And to be honest, it was the first time that concept hit the zeitgeist of the world after that movie came out.
Absolutely. And I think it was designed and timely. Like I said, when I was growing up, my parents didn't know about personal development. They didn't know about this kind of stuff. We didn't have the kind of connection where I could dial in and listen to a podcast like yours, bro. It just didn't exist. And so, we have these tools available now. And with these tools, with great power comes great responsibility, because it's great to hear about this podcast and it's really awesome and so on and so forth. My question is, what are you going to do about it? Because it does also require this three-dimensional or physical action. There needs to be intention. There needs to be action on a regular basis. And so the question is, how do we access the field? And this is how I healed myself, because this was in 2006, I got the staph infection right from the hospital. The doctor looked me in the eyes and he said, we got two choices here. Either one, we cut your leg off from the hip and down to stop the infection. Or two, we don't, we try and fight it, and if it attacks your internal organs, you get sepsis and then you die. So it wasn't, quote unquote, a near-death experience, but mentally it was.
Yeah, you died. You died in your head. You're like, I'm going to die.
Yeah, right. And death for me wasn't just physical death. It was, hang on, while I've strived my entire life to, one, find out what it means to live because my brother died, and two, what it means to heal and live an extraordinary human experience because my sister's always been disabled. And I suffered emotionally because I suppressed it over functioning in the masculine, strong, physically and emotionally, and physically and mentally, but so weak emotionally. So my two greatest fears were realized in that moment. Alex, he said, you'll die or you lose your leg. I'm like, it's the first time in my life I experienced true stillness, true peace. This moment where it's like, hang on, it went from complete darkness to like, what was I worried about? Because I got this knowing, the sense came through me. And I shared this in my seminars. I said, if it is to be, it's up to me. It's what came through for me. My first, quote unquote, download, if you want to keep it esoteric, right? Or moment of pure stillness. And so the surgeon left and I left the hospital, and I tried this was better part of, I think, well over a year, almost a year and a half, Alex, in and out of surgeries, hospitals, wheelchairs, fighting for my life with this hospital infection. It was spreading. I had lost 15 kilos. It was a multi-resistant staph infection. It doesn't respond to antibiotics, and it actually exists in many hospitals, unfortunately, in certain parts of the world. So I had to get this message that I would either be permanently disabled or die, for me to feel within me the answer. And the answer was, okay, look within and find. And I went home and I was teaching yoga, but nothing compared to what we teach now in yoga, qigong, breath work. Our breath work give our clients the experience of the quantum field. 7 out of 10 and now have the experience of the field of expanded consciousness during the breath work. So I went home and I started breathing. I didn't know why, Alexa. I knew Ujjayi and a couple other types of breathing from my yoga training, and I just started breathing. I found certain techniques to expand the feeling of stillness and peace. And that was so good for me, because hang on, he just said that I could die. I'll lose my leg or I die. So what do I do now? I just want to do what feels good, because one, this is expansive for me, painful or worrying. And two, I know that I'm healing in this space. If I can get my nervous system to this level, then I can heal in this space. So again, that's where what we now teach was born through the experience. 3.5 weeks in, so this was a year and a half into it. 3.5 weeks in, I had this little hole on the side of my hip where all the infection kept coming out every day, liters every day, and it closed off. And I went into some, in and out of consciousness continent experiences, and had a fever for 2 days, and it closed, and I healed. And if it wasn't for awareness, if it wasn't for quantum science, breathwork, and meditation, I would have been here at the very best with one leg, Alex. So it saved my life, and it will, if people choose to apply it, because you don't have to break your legs or almost die or, lose things, like some of us have. You can apply this now. You can start focusing now. You can start meditating now. You can start practicing gratitude now. You can start to, decide to sit with your emotions now. And the truth is, esoterically and cliche, but let me share it anyway. Neo recognizes that he is the one, but he doesn't become the one until he what?
Decides.
Believes and believes.
Oh yeah, when he finally says no, and he stops the bullets because he's obviously taking a leap past what everybody else believes that's even possible.
Boom.
And he had tips and he had little tricks
Goosebumps.
of it. Yeah, goosebumps, right? And there was moments of it without even me knowing when he dodged the bullets. Originally, they're like, you're not supposed to be able to do that. There were hints. There was like the quantum field or the universe or God or whatever was giving you tips of like, look, you are capable of doing more than you believe you are. So he finally got to that place where he's like, no, I am the one. I am source. And that's when he started to see the source code. And that's when he was able to play within that environment like a God. Because at the end of the day, we all are God.
That's the key.
We are all one, connected.
That's the whole key to everyone listening right now. It is not outside of you. No one is coming to fix your life. No one is coming to fix your finances or your business or your health. You are the hero that you've been waiting for. You are the one. You are scientifically proven a unique individual expression of source consciousness. Why are you born? It is not random that you're here. What is your gift to the world? What makes you happy? What makes your heart sing? You know, if you want to talk enlightenment, keep it simple. 540 on the Hawkins scale, that is higher than love, is joy. Just live the most magnificent life that you came to live within what you love, that's good for you and good for the world, and you are already making the world a better place. It is not difficult. You don't have to save the world. It is your world that Neo is talking about, your human experience of remembering that you are, in essence, the eternal embodied in time. So let's not get too caught up in this experience. You know, many masters would say, you know, why take life so serious? You know,
yeah. Many of the gurus and the yogis and the swamis, they always laugh at certain things because we takes life so seriously.
Because we live in duality, Alex. You know,
exactly.
Like, but isn't it good, bad, right, wrong?
But isn't it interesting that you said that? And something I want to kind of dig into a little bit is that you said that we are the person who is our hero. We are our own hero. We are our person that's going to be able to help and save ourselves. There's no one else is going to do it. And also that if you do what you love, in joy and in love, you change your vibration.
Yes.
And it raises. And if you change yours, the people around you change. And if the people around you change, then it becomes more of that. And that is what is happening, I believe now. There are so many people waking up. There's so many people looking for this information, wanting to search, to figure out what is going on, because the old ways of doing things is not working anymore. It's working for the few at the top, if you will. And the few that used to sit behind closed doors and saying, I'm the only way. That's not working anymore, where this information is like, you don't need any of that. It is within you to be able to find this happiness and this peace that you're looking for.
And you can, and it's not actually as hard as it sounds if you have the right kind of guidance, like this podcast and you know, many of the other amazing people out there in the world doing it. And you know, we've developed a program that actually people can sit with their emotions, and it's not pain, it's not comfortable. You know, for 3 days we sit with our fear, guilt, shame, grief, sadness, anger, disconnection, illusion, you know, and we heal all of that through the experiences of gratitude and, you know, acknowledging that it's happened for us, not to us. Because the spirit and the soul doesn't look at the human experience and goes, oh, well, I'm a victim. Because this is all kind of like a great university kind of thing. So, yeah, the tools are now available. And I couldn't agree more. This is kind of, to me, feeling like, you know, the Great Awakening, or awakening indeed. We are certainly becoming more conscious, even though it might not seem like it. And I like to... I always used to say what you used to say, you know, the guys at the top. So they're the top with power and money because they control. But are they at the top when we talk consciousness?
No,
probably not. So then, again, where's the hero that you've been waiting for? Have a look in the mirror. You experience life through your senses. You experience life as you are, not as it is. So again, you know, who is at the top? And, you know?
Agreed 100%. Now I'm going to ask you something because we touched upon this a little bit. And I know you've gone through it and I've gone through it at a certain point, at a certain experience level in my life. but is a question I get asked a lot, is trauma. Every one of us has a trauma. Every one of us has pain that we've gone through in this life.
Several thousand, normally, if you study human psychology, there are several thousand wounds in the unconscious mind that are unrectified or not necessarily brought into coherence.
Correct. So that's the biggest thing. In the subconscious mind, you're not even aware of these things. And I had to deal with a lot of that in my own life to get to where I am right now. And I still am working on a lot of things as well as we move forward in life, because we're here to there. I don't believe there's a human being that is born into this existence perfect. Though many of the scriptures we might want you to believe that's not the case. Even the great people we've spoken about, ascended masters, all worked on stuff while they were down here, if you will. There's no question. Down here. I love yes. Down here. Higher vibration up top. So the trauma, how can we use the quantum field to heal our trauma? First of all, to bring it out of us, that our ego and our mind is blocking it off to protect itself. So we don't even know a lot of times that we've been carrying this thing that happened to us when we were 5. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, did that really affect me that much? Holy crap. And then when it starts to come out, you're just like, why am I crying? What's going on? And it's just such a surprise to yourself. So in your opinion, from all the work that you've done, how can we use the quantum field to kind of heal the trauma and pain in our lives?
Awesome. I think this is a really great question. And to answer the question, the first principle is awareness. Okay? Because the quantum field is awareness. God, or the greater organized design, or a unified field, if you want to keep it scientific, is awareness. Okay? And so if you become aware right now that we know that there's unresolved trauma, and that is normally creating the habits that we don't want to have. Okay, so unresolved trauma, lower frequency emotions, feeling guilt, sadness, shame, fear will make us eat, behave, and do things that we don't want to do. Right, so that's the first thing we got to recognize. So now that we're aware that 95% of how we experience life, and this is, you've probably heard this, your viewers and listeners probably heard this, I studied neuroscience for 20 years now. We know that you only access about 5% of the brain. We've heard it, right? So we kind of get those numbers, but we can access a lot more of that now because we have these techniques available, mindfulness, etc. They say there's 4 brainwaves, frequent states. No, there's 5. There's gamma.
The monks showed us that.
We know that. And what about that? Hang on. So science couldn't get it, but the monks.
Oh yeah, science only figured it out afterwards because I love that. I saw one of those that they were testing the monks. And they went down to 4, and they're like, oh, we've gone really far. And he's like, oh, I can go deeper. And then they're like, what is this? And it was a whole other level. So again, stuff that's been around for 4,000 or 5,000 years, science just picked up on.
Exactly. Or it has been lost,
right?
Or it has been suppressed. Probably a combination of both, depending on where you look at it in the world and for what reason. But coming back to your original question, I think that how do we do this? Okay, the first thing is awareness. Okay, so now that you know that 95% of what you experience on a daily and on a lifetime basis is unconscious or subconscious, which means that it occurs without your conscious awareness. Breathing is one, digestion is one. Then also the trauma from 5 when you were in the playground and you got bullied or something happened. You mentioned this example before, Alex, right smack in the imprint period. In that time and also later in life, we create the blueprint and the filters of how we see life. And so if we understand this now, that one, I'm unaware of the majority of the trauma in my life that is creating the majority of the suffering. And this is the same in business as it is in life. Once we are aware of that, the question is, well, how do I resolve that? How do I liberate that? I call it an issue in the tissue. Right? As a primary healthcare physician, I used to call it a diagnosis or a disease, but I don't like to call it that anymore because I really just think that these are signs from the soul, that there is darkness that needs to be brought into the light, or lack of awareness that needs to be brought into the awareness so that it can be healed and seen from the aspect of the soul. If you see it from the aspect of the soul, there is no more pointing fingers because you are creating or having this experience or had that experience for a reason. Okay, if you are energy, frequency, and vibration, if you are a unique expression of source consciousness, then there's no point
pointing fingers, because it's not outside of you, it's inside of you. You created that, in whatever way, shape, or form. So then what we do is and it depends. Some people have the self-discipline to listen to podcasts like this, to actually continue to do the research. And then moreover, to sit in silence and meditation on a regular basis, to seek out teachers, mentors, not gurus, because the guru is only in the mirror, right? But to seek out things that will help you find these wounds. For me, Alex, I put myself under great mentors. I sit with the gurus, I listen, I learn, I try to speak less and kind of hear more or feel more. But for me, we put this together for our students. They come to an event and then we deliberately take them back to processes that took me, 15 years of clinical trials to kind of work out, how do we find a person's fear? How do you find their greatest fear? How does the conscious mind become aware of their greatest fear? So we do this through closed eye meditation slash hypnosis, or we guide them back in time and ask a series of questions. And then the question would be, what's your earliest memory of trauma and fear? And you feel the whole energy in the room just drop. And then they sit and they breathe and they feel what they felt back then. They breathe like they breathed back then. And they get to feel it in their nervous system in both a sacred and scientific space. Then they write it out. Okay, so, I remember when I was 5 on the playground, this happened. And then they journal about what took place. And then they basically become clearer on what this vibration is. Okay, it's fear. Then we show them on the Hawkins scale. Okay, it vibrates at 100 on the Hawkins scale. Neutral is 250. So it's very dangerous physically, mentally, and emotionally to experience fear or fight or flight on a regular basis. It's very dangerous, very dangerous. And unconsciously, we do it all the time. People don't even know. I'm all right.
You're constantly in a state of fight or flight, because the stress hormone is constantly doing what it's doing. And of course, it takes the blood away when you're in that. It takes the blood away from your internal organs. You can't heal yourself. It's all in the external organs because you're about to fight or you're about to run. And you're in that constant state 24/7 between living in modern Western life.
And what are you creating from that space?
Pain,
in the different areas of life,
disease,
contraction, suffering, disease, all of it. And so it is so basic. There's only 2 parts of the human nervous system. I had this chance once to be MC for Preeta G, the founder of the ONO Academy in India, Tony Robbins' personal spiritual mentor, etc. And I had the chance to facilitate a lot of their work. And always 2 states. There's only 2 states. Einstein called it fear and love, contraction, expansion, darkness, and light. In the human experience of duality, this is how it works. So what we do is we do a series of very specific questions that helps the student identify what their blockage is. So let's be clear. Everyone has fear or experiences fear, unless you've got to the levels of the Buddha and the Jesus and ascended masters, whoever that we've spoken about, that may not experience it as much at that level in complete self-realization. But, myself, never even gotten close. Many people listening, we're not self-realized. We're not, we're not quite there just yet. Right. So
we're working on it, my friend. We are working on it. I mean,
and that's the process. That's the beauty. That's the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. The gentleman sitting behind me, Mr. Yogananda, he was self-realized.
Phenomenal. What a book.
Autobiography of Yogi is the book that set me on my path. And he actually has an organization, self-realization organization, because of what was able to do and the impact that he was able to do in the world.
Self-realization fellowship, right?
That's correct. Yes, exactly.
Phenomenal. Oh, they do some great work. I love it.
Yeah. So once you're able to pull this out of the dark attic or basement of your subconscious and bringing it out into the light, I know from my own personal experience that when you do that, it's terrifying. It is uncomfortable. Most people go, get back in that room and let me lock the door and throw the key away because I don't want to deal with that. And it is that kind of, dark night of the soul conversation about things in your own life, in your own existence, that most people rather not deal with, but they don't understand if they don't deal with it, it just gets bigger. The monster gets bigger. It takes more control over you. You get angrier. You get more fearful. You get more. It just it pushes and pulls you your whole life in directions that you don't, it's controlling you and you are not controlling it. So what advice do you have when someone does sit in front of the mirror and really does a face-to-face with their fear or their trauma? How do you process that? How do you like not shove it back into the basement?
It depends on what you want in life, because this is the beauty of it's almost like universal law called free will. It depends on what you want. If you want to live a beautiful, magnificent life, where you experience life and all the beauty that it has to share with you, then you also are aware that the majority of the suffering in your life, again, not in developing countries, but in, countries like America, Australia, many other countries, Europe, etc., we know that the majority of the suffering is internal. Okay, so we have food, we have water, we have shelter.
The basics, yeah.
The basics, we have the basics, and so we have the basics, and so the suffering is internal. It's in here. All suffering begins and ends in the mind, as Eckhart Tolle says, right? And so then the question is, okay, well, if I recognize this, that I experience fear, guilt, shame, grief, fear, or I should say stress, then do I want to experience that the majority of the time? Or do I want to live in a beautiful state the majority of the time? And again, this is pretty easy to say, oh, of course I want to live in a beautiful state, but we have to be cognitive about this process. We have to choose consciously because of free will. So I choose to live a magnificent life. Okay. So then again, what are your value systems? One of the things that I value the most is family. And many people listening would say, I love my children. And so I know that I either one, do the work now and heal my issues in the tissues, my shit, then I don't pass those negative patterns on to my children because it's intergenerational. We know this in epigenetics. So for me, I look at what I value, good health, success within, getting our mission to the world and spreading consciousness and, elevating energy, frequency, and vibration, experiencing love, family, and beautiful relationships, etc. Within that comes responsibility, because like I said, no one's coming to fix it. So if you wish to have a magical human experience, healing trauma is one of the first places to go, because it is the trauma or the unresolved lower energy frequency and vibration in the unconscious. It is the time that your father or mother said that you weren't good enough. The trauma that happened when your girlfriend or boyfriend broke your heart the first time. It is these experiences that are creating the suffering in life that, again, like I said before, Alex, lead to the habits that we don't want to have, addictions as such. So it is choosing consciously that I wish to live a magnificent life, and then leaning into discomfort. It's the same question as asking, how do I get fit? Well, if you wish to be physically fit, you can't stop the moment, if you're doing push-ups, if you're in a yoga pose, if you stop, it's so a little bit uncomfortable, and then you go outside and have a cigarette, or, eat some sugar, or, scroll endlessly on social media, or, pornography, or all these escapes, right? Well, then it's going to come back. And this time, maybe it doesn't come back as a whisper, and maybe it comes back as a slap across the face or kick in the bum, and eventually it comes with a Mack truck, and then the universe will speak so loudly that you must, or at least will have a stronger experience of what is trying to come out, and what you're trying to bring to your awareness to heal. So for me, instead of being dragged through these, because I've had enough of these, or several of these, universal lessons, I lean into it.
Yeah.
I find peace in my yoga pose. When I'm quote unquote hanging upside down, sweating up my nose, if I can find peace there, Alex, on the mat, I can find peace off the mat. So again, the ancient philosophies are simple. It's an inside job. And I lean into it. And so when the discomfort sets in, the hindbrain, it wants to run, but you're greater than your trauma. So our students and in our community, we lean in to the discomfort to heal it. And when we heal the big ones, Alex, we liberate energy, because everything is energy. So we liberate energy, and then we get more life force energy to use into the things that we love. And it's not such as a shadow work over and over and over again, but certainly knowing what the traumas are from the imprint period and turning that from how it happened to you to for you, seeing the benefits and being grateful for the experiences and utilizing that life force energy, that chi now, into conscious aspects of what you're trying to create is kind of a summary of parts of the work that we do, I guess.
And what I love what you just said there is that it releases energy. So you can use it in a positive place in your life. And you're absolutely right, because if you're just constantly angry, constantly fearful or stressed or worried about things, that takes a tremendous toll energetically on your body. And when you release that, and again, I'm only speaking from my own experience, when I released one of my great traumas in life, my whole world opened up. Things started to come into my life. I started to see things differently, not quite Neo-esque. I wasn't stopping bullets just yet, but things became clear in my life. Ideas started to solidify in my life, where my philosophies on life and things like that, things started to make more sense. I wasn't as confused as I was before. You're like, why isn't this happening for me? Why isn't this happening? I want this. I want to control. I want to control. And when I let go and understood what was happening, then things became a lot easier, which is
counter a next level soul.
Right. And it is also a counter to the way we are told in the West, which is about hustle, grind, build,
matrix.
Yeah, exactly. And to a certain extent, you do have to do work. There's no question. But you don't have to control. You have no control. The control is an illusion of the ego. If you believe that you can control other people and things around you to bend to your will, that's the ego. When you understand that you can let go of that and things will come to you in a way that is helpful and positive and in a high vibration in your life, then things open up. I'm assuming that's what happened to you with what you went through.
Very much so. And in essence, the more things you're trying to control, the more the universe is going to show you that you're out of control because of this thing called attachment.
Yes.
You know, study the ancient Indian philosophies, look at the Buddhic principles. What blocks the crown energy center, or our portal to connecting to the higher self, the most is our earthly attachments. So the more things that we are attached to, hanging on to, and trying to control, the more we're going to suffer, because you're not going to be able to control everything. The water doesn't control which path it takes, but it always ends up where it needs to go. So it's like Bruce Lee said, kind of be like water. So yeah, for those who are quite intellectual or overly intellectual, or too masculine within their way of behavior, control is a major aspect, and letting go is divine. It's scary as all hell, man.
Isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's terrifying. It's terrifying, especially if it's something that you've done all your life. If it's a skill set that you've done all your life, because that is what you've used to survive in the world, that is what's happened. And you then figure out, I got to let go of the thing that is my blankie that I've been holding on to since I was a kid.
It's a mental, emotional rebirth.
It was very much so for me. There was a kind of rebirth when I started the show, and I went through my trials in the show as well. But once I let go is when the world started opening up. And I wanted to touch on something that we've been talking about. We've mentioned it a few times, and I know you and I understand what it is, but many people don't. The imprint period. Are you referring to the Bruce Lipton concept of those first 7 years that he talks about so much?
Very much so. Bruce Lipton's work is just phenomenal, but he's not really the founder of this.
No, of course not. Of course not. He's the one that's popularized a lot of it. Yeah.
Very much so, but it's very necessary. Unless the imprint period is a series of experiences that you have, every person from the age of 1 to 7 approximately. It depends on what culture you're raised, how fast you evolve, and obviously your culture and community. So yes, the first 7 years of someone's life, I normally say this. When you understand, like right now, people are listening to a device. Let's say it's a phone or it's a computer. Well, you can only hear the sound coming out or see what you can see on the screen, right? So what you see on the screen, what you hear, great. That's one aspect. But underneath, within the computer or the phone, there are thousands and thousands of processes that are taking place at the same time that you don't necessarily see or think about. The imprint period is the program that was built within your nervous system, your view of the world, how you fire and wire thoughts, patterns, indoctrinations, emotions, experiences, beliefs, behaviors that started from when you were young. So, and again, it's 95% approximately of that is created in the imprint period. So if you have, like many people, been born and raised, kind of done a little bit of personal development, a little bit of professional development here and there, you're kind of curious about things, but you know that there's more to life, then there's always going to be a key for you, a golden key found within your journey, within and back in time to the imprint period as well, because of the traumas that took place then. I had a client a while ago, we were doing some breath work together, and every time she was breathing and she was experiencing fear, this vision would come up in her head of a man wearing a red hoodie, like a red a jumper. And she didn't know why. But she would experience deep fear and the feeling of insecurity when she saw a man dressed in red. And when we went back into close time meditation and she started realizing what was going on, she called her mum and said, "Mum, were we ever attacked or something happened with a man dressed in red?" Because she was only a young girl. She was 3 at the time. And her mum started crying and said, "Yes." I'm goosebumping as I'm telling this story. She said, where they were walking through, I think, a park or something, and the guy tried to rob them. And so all the little one remembered was sitting in the pram and then a man coming and the mum screaming and then the man running off. But that was a feeling of deep trauma and insecurity. And so that was imprinted, that was programmed, that was placed, within the young one's unconscious mind. And so now when the adult, the lady that was a child when she experienced this at 3, when she saw the color red, she would unconsciously perceive a threat.
Wow.
Right. And this was firing and wiring in their unconscious mind until she did this work, and she realized she didn't have any red in the house, did not like the color red. Right. It's not because of red, it's because of the trauma in the imprint period. And so what we had to do was to fall in love with the color red. Right. It may sound so simple, but it's not the color red that was the problem. The problem was that triggered a survival state. And so the imprint period is a principle in human psychology that states that, the majority of how you see the world and experience the world comes from that time. And so to go back and find traumas or incidents that took place during that time and bringing them back to coherence and love, healing them it's a gift, Alex, to have this knowledge now and to have this available to us to be able to do this.
It's so fascinating. It's essentially the operating system
100%
of our computer. It is how we function in life, how we see life. And I always tell people, especially people who are a bit dogmatic with their ideas of spirituality, is I go, well, if you would have been born into a Jewish family, you would have been Jewish. If you would have been born in a Catholic family, you would have been Catholic. If you would have been born in India, you would have been Hindu. If you would have been born in China, you might have been Buddhist. Like in Tibet, you would have been Tibetan Buddhism. Like it would have been different. It all is relative to where you were born. If you were born a Bushman in Australia, an Aborigine, you would have you were not Jewish, and you wouldn't have Jewish beliefs. It all about how you came in. So if you understand that basic concept, then you can start understanding, well, if that's what I was programmed with at the beginning, does it make sense to me? And do I need to open my view a little bit of life? And that's just one aspect of our programming, just religious, but societal, what a man's position is based on what we saw in our father. If we had a father, or if we, it's like, there's so many subconscious things that drive us, that it's basically it's one of the main issues of our existence, essentially.
And it's a loop.
Yes,
it's a continuous feedback loop. So the universe will go, hang on, you haven't healed your fear from when you were 3, from when you were 5, whatever. It could have been from when you were 10. It's not just 1 to 7. It doesn't stop at 7, but it's like the primary neurology is neuroplastically created at that time, the program is built at that time. And so the interesting thing is, like, you look at your phone, right? And if you don't update an app on your phone, across 12 weeks, it ain't working.
Oh yeah.
It's not working. So hang on. How many years since you were 7? how many years since you've upgraded the program? And if that trauma or those traumas or those beliefs are still there, what do you want them to be to make the rest of your life the best of your life? That's the question. And when each person recognizes, hey, Alex, your fear, your listener's fear is different. My fear is different to anyone else's fear, but we all experience fear. Then it unites us. It unites us because the primary blockages, if you want to be a little bit esoteric, of the energy system, the chakras, the spinning vortexes, these wheels of energy proven by science, Professor Valerie Hunt, UCLA University, etc. The primary blockage of these energy centers, of flow of energy from the higher self to the lower self, from the spirit, the soul, 99.9% true to the human experience of duality, the interconnectedness of such, or at least what we know to be the energy centers, what blocks them the most are emotional traumas, brother. And that's why healing our emotions will heal our lives and our businesses, because that is where we're creating from and manifesting from and experiencing from at the same time.
Dr. Espen, I can talk to you for another 6 hours, my friend.
This is cool.
We'll have to have you back and have another long conversation about the meaning of life and the Matrix. Just have a whole episode just on the Matrix alone.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you a few questions. Ask all my guests, my friend. What is your definition of living a good life?
And the reason I pause for this is because I think it deserves a good pause here for us to just take a moment to feel and assimilate for each and every one of us listening, not just for myself. I think for me, living a good life is, firstly, to make it applicable, living a life aligned with our values. I would imagine that many people listening, watching this would have heard about values before. If I was to ask you right now, what are your top 3 values? If you cannot answer me, my values are bang, 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 then go and seek out values and get to know thyself further by knowing what your values are. By that, I mean what it is that you love. Because if you realize or become conscious of what you love, if you love to paint, and painting brings you presence and painting brings you joy, then that is for you a path, to presence, to enlightenment, to living an incredible life. For someone else, it might be surfing. For me, it's researching, teaching, speaking, my health practices, ascension. I love to study ascension, philosophy, family, so when I live a life aligned with what makes my heart sing, then I can be happy and fulfilled. So that's one. And if you chunk it up, honestly, I think part of my path anyway has been, getting closer to source, closer to God, because the more I am on that path of self-realization, remembering not just that I am intelligence, but also that there is a creative force that created everything. That's a cool dude. I want to go hang out with him. I want to get to know him. I want to be closer to, or him or her or it, or, I want to get closer to that, because that's a really special place to be.
Which leads me to my next question. What is your definition of God?
Of God, the greater organized design. God for me is the origin of all things, named in many different religions and practices, quantified in science now. We know it in spirituality. You can call it, whatever you may call it. But for me, it's the origin of all things, that is aware of all things, in all things, and maybe even experiencing all things through us. But it's the origin and creative force and intelligence within all things. That is God for me.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Big questions, huh? The ultimate purpose of life, I believe, honestly, in its most simplistic form, is to live a life that is aligned with our values, because joy is a major part of life, to really not take it so seriously, to be able to live in a beautiful state. And also for me, again, chunking it up, it's remembering who we are and coming closer home.
And where can people find out more about you and the work you're doing, sir?
The easiest way to have this experience is to go to the website and do the quantum experience, the one-day event, which is Dr. Espen, DrEspen, like Aspen, but with an E, drespen.com. Check out the quantum experience. Yeah, and we do the breath work in the 1 day too, and it's really great to talk philosophy and science, to talk all these wonderful things. But when we can give people an experience of having that expanded awareness, experiencing that we are light, that's really what we're excited about. So yeah, check out the Quantum Experience. Also, Dr. Espen on Instagram, Facebook, whatever.
And do you have any final words for our audience?
Firstly, I'm wholeheartedly grateful for the opportunity to be here, to be invited to be on the show. Secondly, I'm honored that you listeners, viewers have spent the time feeling, experiencing, and exploring what this means to you, what quantum science consciousness means to you, and how you can apply it in your life. I would highly recommend listening to this over and over again until it drops, sinks deep into the nervous system. Share it with your friends and family. My final words are simple. There is a field of divine intelligence within you. You're here alive, listening, breathing, and feeling what you're feeling right now, listening to this for a very specific reason. You are truly the one that you've been waiting for. Life is in your hands. Make the best of it, because you are worth it, and you are profoundly loved, and you are important. So go out and make your life magical. Go shine.
My friend, I appreciate you and all the work you're doing in the world to help awaken all of us, my friend. So I appreciate you. Thank you again.
It's a privilege and a pleasure.